Hey, Katie. How are you?
Oh, so good. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm going back to fucking North Carolina now. So going back to work.
Cool.
I'm an essential worker now. Actually, yeah.
Essential.
Anyway, another good thing that's happened. Did you hear about Oklahoma?
Oklahoma. No, I did not.
I guess not. So one of the Supreme Court decisions that we were talking about before.
Yeah.
When did we talk about that? We talked about that last episode. I don't know. One of their decisions that I didn't mention was that they decided to grant half of Oklahoma to the Native Americans.
Oh,
like they originally promised.
Now
so the Supreme Court upheld that shit.
I saw a map on Facebook, but I did not even realize what was happening.
So yeah, that's a giant fucking win for justice. That's fucking excellent, and we just have 49.5 more to go for them.
Oh man!
I mean, all of them is theirs. Like, well, except for Manhattan, they did trade them for $24 and some beads. So that's
Fair.
America's for sure. Yeah.
Beads? What kind of beads? Were they glass
so that's
beads?
Cool.
They're very expensive.
Oh, well, I don't know. They were European beads, so maybe that was like a rosary. Two birds with one stone. Fucking buy Manhattan and convert them. Fuck yeah.
European.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I did
I'm
right
still
before
laughing at European. Oh crap. That's how mature I am.
Yeah. So what was that other? There was another article that I sent you, right? Wasn't there? Do you remember?
About Stormy. Oh, I literally can't remember the story. All I remember is her name now.
Yeah, that's right. So, around where I live, this woman killed her husband, or is suspected of killing her husband. There was a nationwide manhunt. Let me see if I can bring that up. And they thought she was in Utah, and they finally caught her in Las Vegas. And I am looking up the article. No,
that is not where I would go to hide. I don't think.
Okay, here it is. No, actually, I think that would be a great place to hide. It's a lot of it's hiding in plain sight. There's a lot of fucking busyness going on
everywhere. They're gonna snatch your
face.
There's
cameras everywhere, though.
Yeah, but not. Everywhere. I mean, there's a lot of cameras there. Specifically,
yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Yeah. So it says that a Warren County. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. A Warren County woman. A Warren County woman accused of killing her husband was arrested in Las Vegas Saturday. The Warren County Sheriff... That was yesterday as of this recording. The Warren County Sheriff's Office said in a press release, deputies say that Stormy Danielle Nicole Delahanty, 28, was arrested in Las Vegas Metro Criminal Apprehension Team after Warren County deputies filed an arrest warrant and learned that she fled the area. So, what I said to you was that in an alternate timeline, Trump just got assassinated.
What?
Because it was Stormy Danielle. And he fucked Stormy Daniels.
Oh my gosh.
And they got in an alternate timeline, they got married. And you know a fucking Stormy Daniels.
Yes.
What?
Yes. Like a customer, like a regular customer of mine. This is how like of a distancing it is. It's like her son's girlfriend or something. Her name is Stormy Daniels.
Oh, so this isn't like one of those chicks that you like snort your crack off of, right?
No. I mean,
you don't know her that well.
No. Definitely not that well.
Do you snort crack? I have no idea. You smoke weed. That's all I know.
That's evident.
You chew mushrooms.
Once.
Anyway, so this is the Higher Minds podcast.
I'm Katie.
I'm Papa Darby.
Oh, I wanted to go
Hi,
first.
everybody. That's right. They get it. They know who we are. It's going to be the title. So today we are talking about a drum roll. Now, everybody, this is a surprise to Katie. She had no idea. So,
what?
She had no idea. She has no idea who the fuck we're talking about today. So this is new. So everything that she says is off the top of her head, knowledge that she just has resting there. We are talking about one of the most consequential men in not just American history, but history of the fucking world. 20th century. For sure. He's absolutely responsible for the way that politics work today and the
That is
fucked up
evident.
corruptness that it is. That's the way he designed it. We are talking about Jessica Edgar Hoover.
That would be funny.
Which is unfortunate. his mom didn't want, like, according to the movie J. Edgar, Clint Eastwood says that his mom was very disapproving of his femininity, which is kind of just like, what the fuck was she expecting naming him Jessica?
I mean, clearly he was a mama's boy. So there's some.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, I was reading some of this and I just was like, oh crap, I have got to toughen my boys up. I can't
stand up, boy,
boys.
while you pee. No, he lived with her until her death.
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
Man. In the basement. I'm just kidding. I don't know that to be true.
Yeah, but I mean, it's unclear whether or not she welcomed this. But you know, she was a grown adult woman by all accounts, and by everything I see in modern day. All she wanted to do is go out and probably get some dick, and her son was cramping her style hardcore.
That's rude.
It is, of her son.
It makes you wonder. Everyone has their own, like, weird secrets. They all kind of that household sounded kind of serial killery. You know what I mean? Like, she controlled him. You know, I'm watching a lot of Blacklist still, so maybe I'm reading into it too much.
Well,
but
I mean,
I can see how this
they called her
turn
Mama
a
Hoover
million different ways.
Yeah, they called her Mama Hoover for 2 reasons, actually.
Funny. Good job at that.
Yeah.
Oh man. So
tell us about J. Edgar Hoover.
So, born on January 1st, 1895 in Washington, D.C. After high school, he worked at the library.
I should point out that his name was actually John Edgar Hoover.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I should have corrected you earlier.
That's all right.
Just kidding. He worked at the Library of Congress. So, and then he took night classes at George Washington University and earned his bachelor's and master's with his law degree there. And he passed the bar in 1917, the same year that we went into World War I, and obtained a draft attempt position as a clerk with the DOJ. And then he was appointed special assistant from the Attorney General, Mitchell Palmer, and began gathering info on radicals using military and government intelligence, police investigations, private detectives, and informants, and some other things that sounded pretty sketchy.
Yeah. So I was watching J. Edgar this morning, Clint Eastwood's movie. Leonardo DiCaprio plays J. Edgar.
Oh, really? Was it good?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah. And his companion was played by Armie Hammer. You know who that is?
No.
Played Lone Ranger with Johnny Depp. No? All right. Yeah, that's the only thing I remember him from, or I know him from. He's been in other shit too. I only really remember his name because his name is Armie Hammer,
Yeah,
which is,
I mean, that's pretty
like, heavy-handed. Really.
Definitely.
But so according to that, what was his boss's name? The DA? No, the Attorney General. Paulson?
Palmer. Mitchell Palmer.
Mitchell Palmer. That's right. So apparently, in the midst of his employ, Mitchell Palmer was firebombed by communists, which is part of one of the things that fueled. I almost died in that bombing, but one of the things that fueled J. Edgar's drive for control. Like, it's just authoritarianism. It's the law, motherfucker.
Yeah. But oh man, yeah, he was a sketchy God, but I mean, still to this day, anyone who has that much power just turns a little sketchy. So,
Yeah.
January 2nd, 1920, Hoover's division, they refer to it as his FBI, or his division of the Bureau of Investigations a lot. It's kind of funny. I don't know why.
Well,
I
he
don't
was
know
the
why,
first
but
director. Who was the one? He was. I'm not sure who actually gave the FBI the name the FBI, but he was assigned to lead a group of people to do special investigations,
yes,
and that's turned into the FBI.
I touch on that a little later, but I don't know if I have who actually coined it that.
Yeah, I don't know either. Could have been Congress.
It could have been my grandpa. I mean, I have no idea. That's made up. He did not do that.
Yeah, no, it wasn't your grandpa. Unless, I mean,
But
actually,
I do have a fun fact
I
about
wasn't there.
him a little bit later
Okay, awesome.
that correlates mildly. He
But
carried
as we
out,
know, correlation does not imply causation.
but taxation is theft.
Ah,
I had to get it in because it rhymed. Okay, so let me just back up. January 2nd, 1920, Hoover's division of the Bureau of Investigations carried out raids simultaneously across major cities, arresting thousands of communists, anarchists, and radicals known as the Palmer Raids.
I think I heard upwards of 5,000.
Oh, that's still pretty. That feels good.
That's a lot.
That is.
That's a lot
At
of fucking
one
people in
time,
a room.
I'm looking for across like several. I should have looked up what cities.
Well, and those raids were in response to that bombing that I mentioned on Mitchell. They and this was one of the first times that there was a interstate, a national coordinated raid like this.
Crazy Palmer raids. I think it's kind of funny how they were.
Which is
called
what I
that.
do at night. Masturbation.
Oh Lord. So it was at first hailed a success. People originally at first were like, "Oh, cool," and then they realized, "Wait a minute, you're violating some civil liberties."
Like hardcore, like you're allowed to believe in
Yes.
communism in America. There's
Yes.
nothing legally wrong with that.
No. And what do you consider a radical? Like, you know what I mean? They could call anybody a radical at that point.
Well, I mean, the bombings were pretty radical.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty liberal, and I mean, I'm like hardcore, pretty progressively liberal, but I draw the line at violence.
Good.
And a lot of these people were nonviolent contributors, you know?
I wish I would have watched that movie. But I didn't.
It was a good movie. I watched it this morning. Yeah.
You should have told me about it. Rude.
I should have. My bad.
So Palmer resigned and was a big old disgrace, which I thought was funny because it was a lot of Hoover's planning and idea and obvious involvement, but he's the one who coined it and had to resign shamefully.
Well, so the reason though was tactically it was flawless. It was a perfect raid. It went off without a hitch. Yes. And so tactically that was a great success. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, and it was all coordinated by Hoover. But the problem is, you're right. Legally and politically, it was the director's call and the attorney general's call and at his direction. And so he's the one that suffers the consequences of the civil lawsuits or the civil rights violations.
I mean, it's a lot happening. And it's like, you're talking about, this is like 1920. You know what I mean? Like, it's just wild. Mm-hmm. It's just wild to me that the same shit is still happening. It's ridiculous. 100 years later.
We're a lot better at it now though. A lot better.
But it's ugly. Why does the ugly run so deep? Ugh. So
Yeah, I mean, Hoover, like we said, directly planted the seeds. Like, and you'll get into
yeah.
that in a little bit. Yeah.
So 1921, Hoover was named assistant director. 3 years later, the new attorney general um, then hired him, and he was the acting director, and he was only 29. So he was the acting director of
He was
the.
29. I thought he was 24. Oh, no, he's 24 during that raid, I think.
Yeah, he was. He got the position at 29.
29 years old.
You're not
I
even
was
mature yet.
I was still a kid.
Yes.
Yeah, at 9. To be honest, I'm a 40-year-old kid now. But
yes. No, I'm just kidding.
some people aren't. He was quite effective, though. He was extremely effective.
I
if
give
not foolhardy and
anyone
misdirected.
credit who works all day and goes to school all night and law school. Like, you're talking, that's some serious reading power.
Yeah. I did that, and yeah, no, it wasn't fun.
No, I can't imagine it was.
I had kids and was married and had a job and going to school. Yeah.
Bless your heart.
Which means I'm stupid.
No.
Yeah, it's something for your stupid. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be.
But that's how you meant it. It was nice.
That is not how I meant it. Wow. Jeez.
Jesus.
Cheese and rice. Okay. During the Great Depression, Hollywood.
Now we don't curse.
It's really just what feels good at the moment.
I know, right? Yeah.
During the Great Depression, Hollywood.
You have a story to tell. Tell us about J. Edgar Hoover.
I'm trying so hard. So most of America romanticized gangsters and outlaws as heroes for defying authority. Hoover's agents.
We talked about a few of them.
Yep.
In past episodes. We're talking about Babyface Nelson. We're talking about John Dillinger. We're talking about Bonnie and Clyde. Machine Gun Kelly, who is now a rapper. Who is, I don't know. I saw him in concert once.
Skinny white rapper. I saw him in the
he's
Cleveland
dating.
Parade.
What's that chick with the boobs? Katy Perry, or
Is
something?
he really? Oh man.
I have no idea. Well, it's true now because it's on the internet. So yeah.
Oh man.
He was also dating Madonna at one point. He and Michael Jackson had a thing.
Oh wait.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm believing all of this. I'm like, wait.
Yeah.
What?
Strangely, him and Magic Johnson also had a thing.
Crazy.
Yeah. Don't.
True
It was
facts.
protected. Don't worry. He's clean. He got tested. He showed me.
He's rich. He's fine.
Blend it up and inject it.
So Hoover's agents, who were mostly all white, college-educated men, were known as the G-men, the government men.
Did you say mostly?
Well, I did, but they were all.
Every single one to the man. None of them were any shade of brown. Not even close.
Not even a farmer's tan. Hoover.
Because they wore suits.
They had hands.
Yeah. Some of them were aliens.
Kex, what reptilians? What are those conspiracies that are they think everyone's a frog or whatever?
The reptilians, yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
I haven't
David
gotten
Icke?
there yet.
Yeah. He's hard to swallow.
Is he?
Yeah.
That's what she said.
Oh, because it's 3 inches thick.
Oh Lord. So, G-men, government men. There we are. So Hoover set out to reform the scandal-ridden bureau into an effective professional investigation force.
Woo! Yeah, America.
That's what he did. So he got rid of all the weak and started hiring a very aggressive hiring process and had a strict code of conduct for all agents. He created an ID investigation division who handled the FBI's growing fingerprint files, gathering fingerprints from different law enforcement agencies across the whole nation.
He, according to the movie again, had a obsession with categorization, which
I get that.
is kind of human, which is kind of human nature. I mean, Darwin was the same way, and that's why we have all that shit. It's, you know, it's a cool thing, and he did it extremely well. In fact, he again, according to the movie, I didn't verify it further than this, he is accredited with developing the card categorization system that they used, probably not now because everything's computerized and digitized, but used at the Library of Congress. And if you know anything about the Library of Congress has fucking everything. And when I say everything, I mean fucking everything. This podcast is in the Library of Congress. I'm not even joking. Like, Library of Congress has fucking everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
And he already worked there.
Yeah. And so yeah. And so this obsession with categorization and organization, which is probably one of his greatest strikes throughout, was the classification of people and criminals and dissidents and radicals and all shit like that through fingerprints. And that was his thing. He wanted to categorize them through fingerprints and social security numbers and all that kind of shit. And that's what developed the fingerprint database. And yeah, it was the beginning of forensics.
Is my fun fact about my grandpa. He worked out of school. He worked as a fingerprint analysis for the FBI.
Oh, fuck him.
That's all I know.
I'm sure your grandfather's a wonderful guy, and fingerprint analysis is have you ever, the shows show you, like, the movies and what have you believe that you put fingerprints in a database and it goes through, all this shit. That's not the way it is, and that's not the way it was back then. Back then, they had to physically look and compare all of these fucking fingerprints to each other without the use of any other aid than a fucking and a magnifying glass.
Right.
And so you have to assume that there was a ton of false positives and negatives.
I mean, definitely. So that was my fun fact. Yeah. So, jumping up to spying during World War II. Hoover was the public face for the war on crime, which I thought was a funny way to say that because that's still happening, isn't it? In the 1930s, he was.
I think it's changing. I think we're recognizing.
He was considered the ultimate G-man, to the public imagination.
Like, to the point where he was feeding case files to TV shows and movies and shit. Like, all those movies, like Dragnet and shit, that said these cases came from the official files of the FBI and shit. Those old-timey shows, they actually did. And they were being fed to these shows and comic books and like cartoons and shit by J. Edgar Hoover himself, as a propaganda tactic. And not only as a propaganda tactic for the FBI and to recruit more people and to, get the public behind them, which was super effective. It did turn the tide of the professional criminal appreciation to appreciation of law enforcement and shit like that. But not only did he do it for the FBI, but he did it for himself too, to bolster his own political capital.
Yes. I touch on that later too.
Ah, cool.
Cool beans. I can't stop saying that this week, and now it's like a thing that now I know it, and I really can't stop. And I'm like, I have to come up with something else to say besides cool beans.
Which you just said again. I know. Which is cool beans.
Cycle. It's a vicious cycle. Okay, sorry.
Maybe if you put some space between it and say cool beans.
Beans. Or maybe specify
like, what's the temperature? It's cool. And then you...
Cool black beans. Cool lima beans.
Well, if they're black beans, are always cool. It's a racist joke. Can't say that shit.
I didn't.
No, but they're cool beans if they're wearing little sunglasses. That's how you know that.
Or they're in the
little emoji
fridge.
is a cool guy.
Oh. Ah,
I hate us.
this is why everyone listens. We're so
You're
witty,
welcome.
right? uh, oh man. So President Roosevelt gave a sweeping mandate to investigate fascism and communism in the US, and Hoover used this to increase the domestic surveillance, including wiretapping. Several scandals there. He also kept
Oh, even with the president himself that ordered
yes,
these wiretapping shit. Like he gave him
yes,
carte blanche, ability to surveil, wiretap any American without a warrant, which, as we all know now, is illegal.
is a big
Was then
fat
too.
no. You could be craziness.
Not that they've stopped.
Right,
They've got
exactly. They probably just print out their own. Okay, just dropping my stuff. No big deal. Yep. So he increased. Okay, including wiretapping. He also kept tabs on a growing list of people he considered subversives, including Marilyn Monroe, Muhammad Ali, Eleanor Roosevelt, Jackie Robinson, Helen Keller, Walt Disney,
She was hard to follow.
Charlie Chaplin, and Lucille Ball. Lucy. Oh man.
I mean, she did marry a Cuban, and that was under Castro. So, I mean, and all of these people do have communist ties, but so
It's
the fuck
still-
what?
Still.
But I want to touch on a couple of those, namely Eleanor Roosevelt,
You want to touch on
and I
Eleanor?
actually looked into her. Huh?
I said, you want to touch on Eleanor?
Well, so here's what I got. So an FBI agent named G.C. Burton wrote a memo December 31st, 1943, including among the documents that purported to explain why FDR had all but closed down the Counterintelligence Corps, which was the program under which all the surveillance shit happened. Earlier that year, Burton said 2 colonels had told him the CIC infuriated Roosevelt by bringing him tapes allegedly of Eleanor Roosevelt having sex in a hotel room with then Army Air Corps Sergeant Joseph P. Lash, 33 at the time, who was under surveillance for suspected involvement with leftist groups. Now, that may have been true, but it probably wasn't, because Eleanor Roosevelt was famously known to have a gay relationship with another journalist. I forget what it was, and I did some research, but apparently she was a lesbian and barely had a sexual relationship with Franklin, but did have with this lady journalist. But it's my opinion that Roosevelt already kind of knew this and wasn't so the reports say that when Roosevelt was told that he and the wife got into a fight, but the fight was more about her being careful and being caught rather than her infidelity. So, like, apparently he knew that she had these proclivities and was cool with it, but, they still had to keep up. Oh, yeah, he was. Well, he was, I'm not sure it worked. He had polio or some shit, right? He had a wheelchair after a while.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure it worked.
I'm not sure either.
But that's my own speculation. I have never seen any report about that at all, so I have no fucking clue. So anyway, that's what happened with her. And then another person that he talks that he bugged. So I got a big old thing about him, which doesn't sound right. So J. Edgar Hoover was known to have bugged, threatened, sent harassing letters, and posed as fellow Black Americans, and blackmailed Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which is the ultimate appropriation. A white male blackmailing a black male. It's disgusting.
That's a lot of mail.
Anyway, so at various points in the 20th century, both Congress and the presidents instructed the FBI to investigate not just foreign agents, but also radicals and subversives. I think you already said that. We're probably quoting the same thing. But Hoover interpreted that maybe. But Hoover interpreted that as a mandate to develop what the FBI called racial intelligence. In the 1940s and 1950s, the FBI amassed 140,000 pages of documents as part of its investigation of what is called foreign-inspired agitation among American Negroes. That didn't even include its files on individual black subversives such as civil rights activist Ella Baker, the renowned scholar W.E.B. Du Bois, and the singer and actor Paul Robeson. As Martin Luther King ascended in prominence in the late 1950s and 60s, it was inevitable that the FBI would investigate him, like it did every other civil rights movement activist, for what it called communist influence in racial matters. Before I continue, I want to cite my sources, which are thewashingtonpost.com, theconversation.com, and theguardian.com. Anyway, I continue. King did consult with former members of the Communist Party, among many others. One of his advisors, Stanley Levison, maintained closer ties to the party than he admitted to King, and the FBI knew it. 2 days after King delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech, excuse me, I'm burping. 2 days after King delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech at the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, William Sullivan, the FBI Director of Intelligence, famously responded by writing, "We must mark him now, if we have not done so before, as the most dangerous Negro of the future in this nation from the standpoint of communism, the Negro, and national security." In late 1963, FBI leaders met to discuss ways of neutralizing King as an effective Negro leader and developing evidence concerning King's continued dependence on communists for guidance and direction. One of those ways for developing evidence involved bugging hotel rooms and other places to record King's conversations with colleagues. The recordings did not provide evidence of communist influence on the civil rights movement. Instead, they recorded King's extramarital affairs. FBI officials who already planned to neutralize King before they recorded his infidelities shifted the rationale for the campaign to morality without missing a beat. So they were going after him for communists. They didn't find communists, but they found an affair. So this guy is breaking the law and should be taken down for some reason. Anyway, perhaps surprising to a 21st century reader, policing sexuality had long been part of the FBI's mission. The agency had a history of selectively enforcing the Mann Act, the 1910 law that aimed to stem interstate transport of any woman or girl for the purpose of prostitution or debauchery for any other immoral purpose. The FBI did this by prosecuting African American men for traveling across state lines with white women. Its sex deviates investigation from investigation from 1951 through the 1970s produced over 300,000 pages of files as part of what one historian has called a war on gays, which is funny. We'll get to that later. Instead, in late 1964, following the passage of Civil Rights Act and King's award of the Nobel Peace Prize, the FBI sent excerpts of the recordings to King's wife, Coretta, along with a letter that encouraged King to commit suicide to avoid having exposure of his extramarital affairs ruin his life. That was difficult to get out. The stunt failed. In his autobiography, civil rights leader Andrew Young described his and Coretta and Martin Luther King's responses to the tape that accompanied what he called the sick letter. It was a very poor quality recording. There was no question in our minds that this scurrilous material was coming from the FBI. Few people had the capability of bugging hotel rooms except the FBI. So when J. Edgar Hoover died in 1972, his secretary, Helen Gandy, who was completely complicit in all of this shit, destroyed the FBI's personal and confidential files on public officials and celebrities. At the same time, according to Ethan Theo Harris, the FBI Comprehensive Reference Guide. Acting Director Mark Felt incorporated the Bureau's official and confidential files into the FBI's central record system, subject to the Freedom of Information Act requests. Files on King's private life were placed in this latter set of records rather than destroyed, and some were transferred to the National Archives in 2005. To this day, the FBI has not been able to extricate itself from the possibility of involvement with the assassination of MLK. But as the Tuskegee experiments, which continued for decades after the death of MLK, further showed that the U.S. government doesn't care about the horrors it has inflicted on the black man, all things considered, the government is totally cool with it.
Whack. We did a whole episode on that.
Yep. Do you want to continue?
Oh, I have... sorry. I didn't know if you were done.
More?
Yes. So, Cold War, anti-communism. That's the title of this chapter here. Hey, it's not a chapter. During World War II. It is now. Because I said it and it's on the internet, so it's true. During World War II, Hoover's bureau took much of the responsibility for the investigating espionage home and abroad, because the CIA did not exist yet. And I meant to like make a little note and look up when that did and who did, just out of curiosity. Do you know? I don't know.
Who did what?
Who created the CIA and when did it come about?
Oh, fuck. Shit. I did at one point. I can't think of it now. So, I don't know.
It is not relevant. I wanted to know and forgot to look. So once World War II gave way to the Cold War, Hoover turned back to his obsession with the war on communism. The FBI went rooting for Soviet spies and dismantling their espionage networks, aggressively persecuting those accused, like Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. I specifically named them because we also did an episode that featured them.
So, I mean, and he, like I said before, he did this extremely effectively, and it's one of the... It's a direct result of his efforts is that we are one of the superpowers at one point, the only superpower in the U.S. It was because of him.
Crazy pants.
Yeah.
All right, are you ready for this next chapter?
Yeah, let's go.
Is Hoover gay?
What?
Is Hoover gay?
I hadn't heard. What? All right, go ahead.
After the falls and rise of McCarthyism.
Oh, so I do want to say we're not bringing up his homosexuality as a point of interest or as a point of condemnation. That is not... We both, and we've said it before, and I will absolutely say it again, we are friends to gay people. It's not like... it's not an issue. It's not like we don't... they're other people. But this part of himself, and at this time period, and the whole psychology of it, play a big role in how he acted in the future. So, I want to say again, we're not condemning him at all for being gay. We are happy that he was gay. We are happy that he actually did find somebody. Yes. But it's...
supposedly.
Was a deeply ingrained in basically the fabric of how America was built, was his issues with his homosexuality. Please continue.
Yes. So Hoover reemerged as the nation's leading anti-communism crusader, who was now on the theory that communism was linked to homosexuality.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, no, there are gay communists.
Yes, but it doesn't link like that.
One correlation does not imply causation, is what you were saying.
Yeah.
Before.
And taxation is that the second part. So the FBI compiled vast files of speculated or known homosexuals within the U.S. government. Which then turned around to be ironic because rumors were spreading heavily that Hoover himself was a homosexual male. with his right-hand man and friend
I like
at
how
the
you said homosexual
FBI.
male.
I know.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, you
Please.
mentioned Jessica earlier, so maybe I thought I should clarify. That's not true. I don't know why I said it. So with his buddy old pal Clyde Tolson. So
Clyde Tolson.
Clyde.
He's
Clyde,
number
I
2
looked
man.
up Clyde. He looked. I can't
Get it?
start. Yes, I do.
Yeah. Because he hired him. He was second in command, isn't it? What?
Second in
You're weird.
command. Second in the hand. You could you turn the sentence slowly into the sentence you're trying to say. I'm gonna stop. So so I ended up taking way more notes on this next little part, so they jump around a little bit. In this part is when it touched on that he lived with his mom in the house that he grew up in until she died in 1938. So I want to get that out of the way because it's just in the middle of this page with all these notes around it. So he had a relationship with Tolson that was, there may have been some photographs and and so some sites say it was complete speculation. Other sites pretty much say it was used against him and that he didn't pursue certain mafia and things like that because of said pictures. So he had a gangster.
Well, he was he loosened up about his homosexuality in certain company, and so it's very possible that he, in public, acted on his natural desire.
Yeah. Well, most things say that he just was possibly the type that had no real desire of a sexual nature anyways. That he was just lived in his mom's basement kind of guy.
I got some anecdotal evidence says otherwise, but maybe.
I'm just saying, on my sources, history.com, wikipedia.com, and a couple of YouTube clips. But I think it was History that kind of shut it down more than any of the other sites. Wikipedia had a lot of information about Tolson specifically. But Frank Costello would...
So, but let me talk about Tolson real quick. One of the odd things about Tolson is that he... Hoover was extremely strict with his hiring practices.
Yes.
With his, with everybody he hired in the FBI, except for he made a lot of exception when going through the hire practice with Tolson.
That is a fun fact I didn't know.
No.
But I did read about his rigorous hiring process. Yeah. Oops, I skipped a page. So, but Frank Costello would kind of give him tips, and he would have agents to go put $100 bets down for him. And it was said that this particular gangster, Frank Costello, and a Mr. Lansky obtained some photos of Hoover and Tolson and used them to ensure they weren't targeted and played friends. So he gave him tips, he gambled, he had pictures, used them against him. That's that.
That's the way the world works.
It really is. A Susan Rosensteel, maybe. She was a society divorcee who was at lots of...
Society divorcee.
Yeah, she probably talked just like that. She was at all kinds of fancy parties.
That's how society divorcees talk. All of them, as soon as they get divorced, they just talk like this all the time.
Oh, goodness. Is this going to happen to me?
Yes, it's already happened. This is how you sound. You just know the of it.
That's awful. It is awful to hear your own voice. So she said she had seen him cross-dressing at an all-male party, and she kind of just had kind of confirmed suspicions for people, but she also served some time in jail for being a liar. So
Well, I mean, if you've got evidence like that against the most powerful law enforcement agent in the world,
shut
yeah,
it
you're probably going to spend a
down.
little time in jail. Yeah. But so, I mean, that in itself, though, doesn't make him gay
No,
or transgender or anything. I have worn dresses and stupid shit at parties. Yeah, there's pictures out there. Yeah, look them up.
I
They
tried
probably won't
once.
find them easily.
No, I
Yeah.
tried. There was another who had said that he was seen on 3 or 4 occasions um, that were driven down to La Jolla, and that Hoover requested 4 boys. I put that down because I thought it was interesting how it still ties in today's sex trafficking. Why do boys always got to be involved in everything? Um,
Oh, this shit. Like, okay, I get into it and I tie it directly into what the fuck with into Lolita Island. So yeah, go ahead.
and I thought it was funny it was
I
called La
forgot to tell you I
Jolla
do that.
because I was like, man, this is
All
ringing
right,
a
go
lot
ahead.
of bells. so, so Hoover left Tolson his estate, and after Hoover died, he was given his flag. Um, took that home and probably put it on his mantle. And then he is also buried just a few yards away from him. So that feels substantial. I feel like you don't just get buried next to anybody. So, yeah.
Eastwood stretched the truth. Though there was just one passionate kiss between Leonardo DiCaprio and Armie Hammer, the two actors portraying them in the movie, the relationship with Tolson is a central theme. In real life, all Washington knew was that the pair dined daily together, vacationed together, did everything but move in together, and the whispers flew. When a magazine article in the 1930s referred to Hoover's mincing gait and a diplomat commented on his conspicuous perfume, Hoover struck back. He gathered derogatory information on the offending journalist and asserted falsely that he did not use perfume. So he obviously used perfume. Real information on the Hoover Tolson real information on the Hoover Tolson relationship surfaced only after both men were dead during research. A surprising find was Louisa Stewart, who was a celebrated model who was featured in a droll photograph taken with Hoover and Tolson one New Year's Eve in the late 1930s at the Stork Club, which was the place to be seen in New York at the time. In the photo, Hoover is shown holding his hands up as Stewart, armed with a toy shotgun, threatens him. Later that night, in the dark of a limousine when they left the club, she remembered, I noticed they were holding hands all the way, just sitting there talking and holding hands with each other. I was so young and those were different times, but I'd never seen two men holding hands. Joseph Shyman, a former Washington police inspector, recalled a taxi driver reporting the pair had been kissing and ass-grabbing during a cab journey. Harry Hay, founder of America's first gay rights group, remembered that on vacation in California, in a circle in which they didn't have people who weren't gay, they were knotted together as lovers. The most significant, credible information on Hoover's sexuality, though, came with the discovery that Hoover for a while consulted Marshall D. G. Ruffin, a Washington psychiatrist who became president of the Washington Psychiatric Society. De Ruffin's widow, Montine, recalled learning from her husband that his distinguished patient was definitely troubled by homosexuality. After several sessions, however, Hoover got paranoid about anyone finding out he was a homosexual and got scared. As if to compensate, Hoover lashed out at and sought to expose other homosexuals. For years, he had his agents infiltrate and monitor homosexual rights groups while he sounded off publicly about sexual deviance in government service. So he went out and he sought out all of the gays in the area. I think he really just kind of wanted to start Grindr.
It really makes sense.
Yeah,
Expose
he just
everyone.
want to know where they were.
Where you at?
Hey,
Are you interested?
yeah. Do you want to come work with me or under me?
Over me? I don't
You want to
know.
walk on top of me? You want to kneel and work?
Me.
Or you're going to jail?
We're going to jail. All right. So Hoover and the Kennedys. And then,
Hoover? And the Kennedys.
Ooh, ooh.
He wanted to Hoover the Kennedys, didn't he?
Who
Because they were
didn't?
pretty. All right.
In the 1960s, his FBI investigated leaders of civil rights movement, which he thought was intimately connected to communism.
Communism.
I used to go with a girl in high school, and she couldn't say cinnamon, and she was like cinnamon.
Cinnamon.
It's really funny.
It is a very complicated word.
At Hoover's request, I'm just skipping big old parts. So he had a huge file on.
Yeah, he did. Huge old file.
JFK.
It went down to the floor.
Wow. So he had this file on John F. Kennedy's affairs and alleged mafia connections, and fought regularly with his brother and Attorney General Robert Kennedy, who tried to exert some control over his FBI activities. And he didn't like that.
Well, part of the problem was that JFK had no self-control. Like, he was out fucking women all the fucking time, who wasn't Jackie O. Like, all the fucking time. He did not stop. He was a fucking rabbit. And reportedly, he fucked like a rabbit. You ever seen those videos of rabbits fucking? Like 5 seconds of like intense fucking, like, I'm gonna rip your pussy out, and then just fall over to sleep.
Boom. Then hibernate.
Yeah. So apparently it was like that. But the bug happy Hoover had all of this recorded. I think I heard it on the last podcast on the left. Who are friends of the podcast? They mention us all the time. But J. Edgar Hoover was bug happy, so he had all of his activities recorded, and I would imagine he probably showed them to Robert and John, and they were like, "Nice, you got it all." Oh, you guys remember that one? Oh, that was cool. Oh man, she was
weird.
She was hot.
She was hot.
And like fucking Hoover is like, "What the fuck? You're fucking other women. You're not allowed to do this." They're like, "Oh no, man, it's cool."
Just because you don't.
And like, yeah, the Kennedys they bugged each other to no end. They hated each other.
So at Hoover's request, Robert Kennedy authorized unlimited electronic surveillance of MLK Jr., recorded much of his work and personal life.
Yeah.
And after JFK was assassinated, Lyndon B. Johnson relied heavily on Hoover and ordered him to crush the KKK in the South. And Johnson,
which he did,
was the one who waived the law that the age of retirement was 70, and Hoover stayed in office. So I didn't know that either.
Yeah. He worked till his dying day.
Yeah. Which wasn't much longer after this.
But to his credit, like, Hoover did take down the KKK. Awesome. Well, as much as he could. That ideology doesn't go away. But Hoover was, in my opinion, like, so I'm a patriot. I'm American. I like being American. I'm proud of being American. I'm not part of the government. You know, there's that distinction, blah, blah, blah. But I believe that Hoover was too. And I respect patriotism in another patriot. Not even if it's not for, you know, if they're not a part of my country, a patriot, you know, you can respect patriotism. And I think that he was, in that he built America to suit himself. And so that I said in a previous episode that he saw himself or America as a part of him. Or himself as America, or America as a part of himself. Like, it was a baby that he gave birth to, which in a lot of ways he fucking did. Like, that's not incorrect. So he did have America as a country that was
The interest
he
was
had
there.
America's best interests at heart.
Yes.
What? Yeah.
But he,
Even if they were misguided and fucked up, and he was wrong and
anyone
shouldn't have done a lot of the shit.
who, you know what I mean? Like, that's a lot of pressure for anybody to be in charge and start making up rules, and then you're trying to cover stuff up for things you've already met. You know what I mean? Like, no one who's out here handling that right. Nobody.
Right. You're right. No, that gives him excuse.
No,
he absolutely abused his power.
Not at all. But I'm just saying, it just seems like, is there someone who can handle that? We haven't seen it a lot.
Our robot or alien overlords pretty soon, I guess.
We'll find out. Space Force. Just kidding.
Space Force. I love that idea. I so love that idea. It's such a good idea. I want to sign up for Space Force.
Ooh, interesting. Wonder what the qualifications would be.
Not me. That's a branch of the military. Not me.
Definitely not me. So Hoover and Nixon, even though they were
I got a bit of them too.
Ooh, got a little bit of that. Even though they were longtime pals, his leadership came under threat, and enemies within the White House plotted to replace him. An ambitious subordinate.
Both men, Nixon and Hoover, were like crazy paranoid guys.
Yeah.
Like they're both known for their paranoia.
It's clear.
And which can work together like in harmony if you get in the right groove, but if you don't, then it will absolutely work against each other.
Yeah, for sure. So an ambitious subordinate, that's how they worded it, which I thought was funny. Bill Sullivan, it was gunning for his job. So, he feared that Hoover still had too much power to bring, down the government. So Nixon didn't fire him. He instead then had Hoover fire Sullivan and replaced him, with Mark Felt. And Mark Felt would be the fella who later became famous as, and I should have verified this, as Deep Throat, the main source for Washington Post who broke Watergate. Ba-ba-ba-bow.
Yeah.
Deep Throat.
Famous guy.
So, yeah, that's bananas. He was scared. He was paranoid. And instead of handling it like maybe he should have, he chickened out and fired someone down the line.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about Bill Sullivan?
Not by name. I know about the Watergate scandal and shit.
Yeah.
A little bit, but not like enough to educate people.
We should do that sometime. That would be fun.
Sure. You want a political scandal? Sure. Yeah.
So from there, I just have his death and a little bit about his legacy. So May 2nd on 72, he died in his sleep. So that's a good way to go. At the age of 77, and then it was after he died that accusations mounted. The FBI, his FBI, used illegal surveillance to spy on anti-war and political groups over the decades. The Justice Department would rein in the Bureau, and one step being 10-year term, ensuring that no one had that much power again. Smart.
Yeah. And I mean, kind of. We'll see. We'll see what's currently going on. We'll see what happens.
We'll see.
So some have said that it was the actions of J. Edgar Hoover which directly led to activities like Lolita Island. It has come to be known that Ghislaine Maxwell has recordings of famous and powerful people raping little girls. These recordings were made by Epstein in the intent of using them to leverage influence over the people on the tapes. What is suggested is that some of these people were forced or otherwise coerced into raping these girls in order to have influence over them in exchange for the keys to becoming part of the 1%, part of the most powerful people in the world. That in effect these rapes were hazing in new people to power. Hoover discovered, by doing the same type of thing to the Kennedys and other people to great effect, that this kind of evidence allows one to maintain power and that some deviance in pursuit of said power is acceptable. That's my final thoughts.
Final thoughts with Darby.
So he's he's fucked up the world. Hoover was all in all, did some good things.
He tried.
Had great ideas and executed a lot of the stuff poorly.
Yeah. He also
he did good. There are good things that he did. I mean, the FBI does, they do kidnappings and bank robberies and stuff like that, and that's good. That's great. But he also created this corrupt system of power grabbing that everybody now subscribes to. He basically wrote the playbook for it.
Yeah.
And it's just ruined the way that American politics work. Not only American, it's a lot of politics around the world. He affected the world greatly with, I think it had a lot to do with his fucking homosexuality, that he didn't like it and he was uncomfortable with it and tried to fight against it and its influence on the world, and ended up,
maybe there should have been more diversity in the workplace and he wouldn't have felt so uncomfortable.
Maybe there's a lot of things they did wrong back then.
Yeah.
But
facts.
Jessica Edgar Hoover.
That's the story.
Yeah.
We're sticking to it.
That is. It is.
It is bad.
One last thing. He was consulted on the or the FBI was obviously consulted on the Lindbergh baby, but we all know what happened with that. The story goes that the police flubbed it, but what really happened was the night of the kidnapping, the baby accidentally died, and nobody could have saved him except for, the kidnapping not happening. So, yeah.
The kidnap.
He also, that was a big, kidnapping not happening. But that was also a large influence on, ignited his passion for law and order. Flame. Yeah, that was one of the first cases that happened to him in his career.
I go back to not justifying anything, but I still go back to he was so young when he got into everything. I mean, it's just incredibly young, and so his opinions and when you're young, you have such passionate views on stuff. Like, he already went gang ho on it, so he had to kind of stick to it. It felt like, and that's what he did.
You're right. Well, and you're right. He had being so young and being chemically and mechanically in your brain immature, not quite yet physically developed. Right. He had this warped sense of the world. Mm-hmm. Not only was he in law enforcement, which you see in law enforcement, the worst of the world, the worst people of the worst, and you have to deal with them. That's your mandate. Yeah. That's what you go do. You go deal with the worst people in the world, and so him growing up and developing in such a way, plus fighting his homosexuality, he didn't see the world right, and he kind of created, he kind of warped the world as well to his own warped worldview. Right.
And you have to imagine, obviously back then, he lived with his mom, who was probably a Christian woman, who that was heavily frowned upon. And
she died because she refused doctors' intervention for faith.
Oh, man. Well, so, I mean, he probably was thrown with a lot of harsh, he probably talked to her, you know what I mean? They obviously had a pretty good relationship, so if that was shunned upon, he was just combating things from a lot of different angles too. Yeah. So shame on him.
Plus leading plus leading an extremely consequential project. Yeah. Something that affects almost every American's life and people around the world.
Yeah.
I mean, it affected the development of the CIA for sure. Mm-hmm. And that affects people all around the world. I mean, fuck. They're fucking up people all over the place. I mean, they're helping. I'm not saying they don't. But they also fuck shit up.
Yeah.
And this guy fucked a lot of shit up. And the world didn't have to be this way. If somebody had picked somebody else other than him, somebody a little more emotionally mature.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. we might have a more fair and equitable government, but you know, we don't. So
it's crazy what one person can do to everything.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, if you want to tell us how much you learned about Mr. Edgar Hoover,
Jessica,
where would you do that?
At the email.
That was so awkward. I'm so bad at that. Like, I gotta figure that shit out. Maybe it's just not me. Maybe I just
I'll do
that's
it
not my
next
job
time.
anymore.
Yeah. So
All right.
hiremindspodcast@gmail.com. Maybe a little Facebook message or Instagram or Twitter. I think, is there a comment section on the website? I mean, there's probably lots of ways you can get a hold of us now.
Yeah.
So
there is. We're on Spotify.
I was gonna say, you know where else you can get a hold of us now? Spotify.
Yeah.
America. Okay. That's what I thought when you said.
Sit next to Joe Rogan, which was something that we mentioned last time that got cut off. That we're in the same room as Joe Rogan. Yeah.
So close.
Hi, Mr. Rogan.
Hey, Rogan.
Thanks for listening. He totally listens to us. He talks about us all the time.
Yeah. Mentions us, but it cuts off his too.
Yeah, usually. It's a legal thing. We're working through it.
We'll get there.
We're not even supposed to talk about that.
Erase. So yeah. Send us.
Thanks for listening.
Some things. Comment on our stuff.
And send us some things. And talk about it and tell your friends. And yeah. They'll like it too. I promise. Because they like you. Because you're a wonderful person.
Come back.
Yeah. You're pleasant. And everybody likes you.
This is turning
everybody
into
wants
sleepy
you
meditation.
around. Yeah.
Exhale deep.
Anyway. This has been the Higher Minds Podcast, and I'm Papa Darby.
And I'm Katie.
This is Yo.
Bye.